Become a better personal trainer by becoming a better man. Become a better man by applying knowledge from others who've walked across the fire and have a thing or two to say about it. Listen to Joe as he delves into some of the greatest minds of the best coaches in the world, who bring inspiring stories and powerful insights to share about the human condition. Hear how the fitness industry goes only muscle deep, and how a new breed of trainers are using emotional and mindset hacks to improve as men, evolve their game, and make the competition irrelevant. Trigger your pathway to greater fulfillment. With us, stand in the face of fitness. Welcome to the Fit Man Collective.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Man Collective podcast. I'm your host, Joe Hanney. In today's show, I have special guest David Beadle. David is the founder and chief intentional officer at Fit Happens Intentionally, a fitness and health innovator on a mission to help people move more, eat better, live better, intentionally. He brings over 35 years of fitness industry experience to Fit Happens Intentionally. As a frequent speaker and presenter at industry conferences at the local and national level, he is recognized as a thought leader who is not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom, a creative problem solver who thrives in partnership development. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Man Collective podcast. I'm your host, Joe Hanney, and with me today, I have David Beadle. David is the founder and chief intentional officer at Fit Happens Intentionally. David, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Joe.
Excellent. Thank you for being on the show and giving up your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure, sir.
I invited David on the show today to speak about a fitness opportunity in the workplace. But to begin, before we begin, I'd like David just to share a few words about himself and introduce you to the audience.
Sure. Well, Joe, thanks again for having me on the podcast here. I've been in the fitness industry, over 35 years now, 36 years, I guess I'm going on. And I spent a lot of my time in the corporate arena. I spent about 20 years working for a Fortune 100 company here in the San Diego, California area. And then about a year and a half ago, the company decided that they were moving a different direction with things. There's a lot of restructuring going on, and I was one of the things that got restructured. So I found myself kind of out and about looking for different stuff to do. And I decided it was a great time. I probably didn't have a better time in my life to try to pursue something that for me had been a passion, an idea, almost a calling. I thought about what is possible to do with workplace fitness. I had always believed that it was possible to take what I was doing at a Fortune 100 company level and bring that down to the level of a small employer. And spent the last year and a half really trying to figure out how to do that. Like I said, I've been in the industry 35 years, exercise physiologist by training through my college years, worked in all aspects of the industry. I've worked in health clubs, I sold exercise equipment, did personal training for a little bit way back in the day, but most of my time was spent working in and around the corporate fitness arena, either as a vendor providing services from an outsourced perspective, or as an in-house program, or most recently as a manager of vendors who are providing services for me. The program, yeah, go ahead.
No, continue, sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to say the program that we had and the company that I was at most recently had grown from, I think we had 3 fitness centers when I started there in 1996, and those were all locally based in San Diego. We grew that program to at one point where we had a total of 24 fitness centers around the globe. I had 13 that I operated in San Diego alone within a 5 square mile area, a total of 19 across the United States. And then we actually had 2 facilities in India, one in Haifa, Israel, and the last facility that we built was in Longtan, Taiwan.
And just for the audience purposes, those facilities, are they within actual businesses themselves?
Yeah, so those facilities were all within buildings for the company that I worked at, where our employees were at. For example, in San Diego, where the company was headquartered, we owned or leased about 42 buildings across a 5 square mile area. So each of these fitness centers was in a building, and most of the facilities were either we had tried to place it as such so that we had kind of that minimum 15-minute travel distance that the club industry is known for. We had to we had to work with kind of the same dynamic, even though it was for a more captive corporate population. But if it was a 15-minute walk or a 15-minute shuttle ride, generally anybody, no matter where they were at, could get to one of our facilities.
So there was definitely a market for employee wellness, employee fitness, health and well-being, from what you've just said. And is that
absolutely.
And this calling that you mentioned, Fit Happens intentionally. How was that? Was that how this was all born, from that experience?
Yeah, it's funny. The seeds of that were really sown back in the 1990s. When I was first starting to work with this organization, we were challenged with how do we bring group exercise and personal training services to this population. At that time, we only had the 3 facilities. They weren't large. I mean, the largest facility I think I had at that time was maybe about 1,800 square feet. I had one small group X room at about 700 square feet. And it was anytime I brought a vendor in as like a private entity, the cost was really kind of prohibitive. And it was definitely a time in the whole fitness industry when everything was bundled together. So you'd go to a health club, you'd pay your membership, and you got access to everything, right? So you could go to group X classes, no matter what. Well, here I was offering essentially the same thing. There was a place for exercise equipment, and people wanted to have group exercise. But because of the dynamics and the economics of bringing a person in, it was like, $10 a class.
Yeah.
And this was like 1990s. That was a pretty cost prohibitive barrier for folks. So I started at that time actually reaching out to the health clubs to see if there was a better business model that made sense, because they already had a lot of the fixed costs taken care of because they were operating a club. They had group exercise instructors. I thought this was a great way to potentially extend what they already had to my facilities. They were already paying for the overhead. This was just a way for them to get additional revenue. So we had some early success with that. The club partner that I had started working with that wasn't quite convinced this was a good deal for them, so they didn't hang in with us long enough to really prove the model. But that really is where it started. And this idea of being able to do this on for companies that didn't have the resources for the company that I worked for was something that I was always fascinated about and trying to figure out how to do.
And we spoke about this off air previously. Corporate gyms, they don't really offer a great deal, do they, for small businesses? They offer the corporate discount, X, Y, and Z members that join, you get a percentage of their membership. But you was looking to create something different, wasn't you? You was looking to find something quite unique. You wanted an offering, a unique proposal that was something more than just discount. Was that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I started to kind of put the things together in my mind in terms of how could I make this work? Because that's what I had seen the fitness industry do. I sat on the other side of the desk, on the other side of the phone from these people all the time. I was getting phone calls from the LA Fitnesses and the 24-hour Fitnesses and the other big chains in the area, and says, you sign up 100 of your employees, we'll waive the discount, we'll waive the initiation fee and give you guys this much of a discount. That was the sum of the approach that the vast majority of health club owners have for the corporate market. As an example, there was one up in the Bay Area. We had a company that we acquired, and they had a pre-existing relationship with one of the club chains up in the San Francisco area. Now, their typical membership rate for anybody coming in off the street was about $65 to $70 per month. So that would put them kind of at the higher end of the mid-tier market, which is where my sweet spot is. They were our employees were paying $15 a month on a group discounted membership. And there was a ton of people. So the club was probably getting something out of it. But in terms of me as somebody who was interested in seeing outcomes for the employees in terms of their health, most people weren't using the membership. We started checking actual utilization, and it came down to maybe about 10% of the people that had paid for that membership. And the reason we got really involved in it is because when we acquired the company, we took over the bill. So I started paying for all these people.
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute now. If I'm paying for these guys, I want to make sure they're getting some value out of it. And we're getting some value out of it. And we found out that really only 10% of the folks, if even that, were actually using the facility on a regular basis. So that was again, was another one of those seasons. This does not make any sense. This company, sure, maybe they're getting a little bit of extra revenue, but they're giving away all of this on the table. They're not doing anything for my employees other than basically giving them a place to use exercise equipment. And I call most clubs now that do this are basically just exercise equipment rental warehouses.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Most gyms really that's all they do. You pay a fee, you get a chance to rent the exercise equipment for a couple hours a week.
Well, we said this before, they hope you don't turn up, and they're only just adding to that by, as you said, when they're calling around saying or encouraging you to bring 10, 20, 50 employees to the gym as members for a group discount. They're just crunching numbers, aren't they? They're not really caring for the actual person or member that's going to be joining.
Exactly.
So I suppose looking at it from that angle that you've just given us, actually as an owner, I want my employees to benefit from this vastly. I want to ensure that they are actually utilizing the membership, but also getting health benefits. That's a real key insight.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, it's when you look at what the health club industry, and this is where to me it kind of comes full circle and how all these things fit together. The health club industry now is in a real state of flux. They're trying to kind of figure out where they are. We've got on the low end those high value, low price facilities, which really do cater to that market that just needs a place to get exercise equipment. They just rent exercise equipment. They've done a really good job at capturing that market, the bulk of the market share. The health club industry in general typically only gets 16 to 17% of the adult population exercising. So there's another 80+% out there that we're not really serving well.
Mm-hmm.
As boutique studios and other opportunities for people to exercise have come into vogue in the last couple of years, they're just chopping that 16 to 17% piece of the pie into smaller and smaller chunks. The average memberships are going down in the industry overall, and the middle tier of the market, which is where I've placed my focus, are the ones that are really struggling. They can't differentiate themselves from the low-cost operators. They don't have the amenities of the luxury or high-end. They don't right now have the ability to really compete with the boutique studios and their higher level of engagement. So they're looking for ways and really struggling right now for ways to find ways to survive, really. They need revenue. They need non-dues revenue. They need other sources of income. They need to find a way to get a bigger chunk of that population pie. And so that's what we're really trying to do with Fit Happens intentionally. We created what we're calling a workplace fitness ecosystem that's designed to help clubs and studios and personal trainers to really leverage that workplace fitness opportunity.
Mm. And that leads to one of my questions. The ecosystem that you've created, how does that really differentiate itself to other corporate offerings out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you look at what's really out there for corporations, there's the big players such as Plus One, Health Fitness Corporation, Exos here in the United States. I know they've got a few of those, I think, overseas as well. But basically, those companies have focused on the Fortune 1000 and above. I actually had hired Plus One Optum to run our facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Then one of the last things I did there, and they do very, very well for those large corporations. They'll come in, they'll operate a fitness center, they'll set it up and design it for you, help you build it, all that, staff it, but that comes with a big price tag. The other approach has been, and kind of on the lower end, is I've seen some personal trainers out there now that have gotten very interested in this market, and especially with the smaller employer, because they're uniquely positioned to be able to come in at a low price point for the employer and offer the services of getting their folks moving, maybe do a couple of lunch and learns, but right now that's kind of the extent of what they do. We're with the workplace fitness ecosystem, we're trying to help all of those folks who are interested in seeing what can be done for the corporate market to put together a strong package with a strong value proposition that does differentiate themselves. It certainly goes well beyond a group discount. It's a program where they're actually have a defined dimensions of fitness that we help them hang their programming off of. If they have existing programs within the 5 dimensions, they can put them in there. If they don't, for a certain dimension, we'll help them find fill in the gaps. And then they've got a solid program that they can take to an employer that's going to be something they can price, that's affordable for the employer, but it's also going to be lucrative as well for the provider.
Okay, I like that. And that, on the topic of personal trainers and then trying to differentiate themselves, break it down for those that are listening. What opportunities does this really create for that trainer? If you could just give a kind of 10,000 foot overview of this and kind of break it down for them and share what opportunity this will bring to that personal trainer or gym owner?
Sure. So let me back up a couple of steps here. So one of the things that we did when we put this together was we defined what we said fitness was. Now, admittedly, I kind of borrowed this approach from the folks at CrossFit. CrossFit defined their nine levels, their 9 key core exercises. I think that's a great idea. You've got to kind of package this stuff. When I was first talking with people as I was getting out into the market and trying to figure out what I was going to do, I ran across a gentleman by the name of Rick Caro. He's one of the top consultants in the fitness industry, in the club industry. And that was one of the things he said to me that struck me. He says, the club owners, personal trainers, they need to be shown how to do this. Give them a program and they will be able to do this. So for the possibilities for personal trainers are really pretty amazing. Challenges I see with trainers is a lot of them have been out there for a while. They're getting burned out on the one-on-one. They're maybe looking for ways to leverage their time, because that's the big challenge. That's what I found out when I was a personal trainer back in the early days, was that you're limited by the number of hours in the day and by your ability to stay healthy and continue to move. There's got to be other opportunities to leverage what you have in terms of your technical knowledge and expertise and your desire to really help people. Is there a way to do that and make more of it? So personal trainers have started to look at this corporate market. As an example, one young man that I've been talking with, been almost a year now when I first connected up with him. He was really interested in doing this. He was calling people on the phone all the time, trying to figure out what to do. Didn't really have a structure. He connected up with an organization in the United States here that is doing certification for personal trainers. It's called the National Corporate Fitness Institute. Mm-hmm. And in about 6 months, he went from having 0 contracts to having 11 corporate fitness contracts. Wow. Now, he was fortunate in that he connected up with a friend of his who works for an insurance broker. Now, in the United States here, the insurance piece of it was always a big play. But what this insurance broker was able to do is he was able to take this trainer around to his clients, his book of business, and say, we have a solution for you for your wellness needs. Here he is. Talk to him about what he can do for you. And then he was able to sign up, and he's got group exercise classes going, lunch and learns. He's putting out daily and weekly email reminders for the people in an area of North Carolina, which wasn't really heavily populated. So it definitely can be done with a little bit of effort, get the right connections, and he's doing fantastic. He's actually so busy now that he's started to hire people to actually take off some of the load. So it's a great opportunity for personal trainers to really leverage their time, leverage their expertise, and continue doing what they love to do.
That's a great answer. And just for those that are listening, and I'm sure they'll probably have this question: do these trainers have to? Is there already a purposely fit, suited gym on site, or does your system incorporate that as well? Did that make sense?
Yeah. So if I understand it, what you're asking is that do they necessarily have to go to the employer, or does it have to be within the walls of a gym? And the answer to that really is both. Is in the club owners to really think what I call outside the gym, outside the walls of their gym.
Okay.
Because again, that's one of the challenges that the current business model most clubs are operating under is this membership model. Mm-hmm. The membership model dictates that they pull people inside their walls, get them to pay this membership fee to rent the equipment from them for a certain amount of time each month. So by trying to change that mindset of the club owners, thinking outside of their facility, they can then extend services to the employer's work site if it's appropriate. Now, the employer doesn't have to have a gym on site.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, no, don't need to. And that's what I'm seeing. So a lot of these personal trainers do really, really well. They're able to go in, and if you are creative, you assess the facility, you assess the physical aspects of the employer, and say, okay, where can I do this? We've got pictures of trainers who are putting classes together in a hallway.
Yeah.
All the people, there's like a dozen people down on the ground doing push-ups in a hallway. All you need is a hallway, conference room. If you're in a place that's got, decent weather most of the year, you can do these things outside. It's just a matter of getting creative and understanding what you can do with your space. But what that does for the club owner is that extends that bubble that most clubs operate in, that 15-minute travel time bubble. And that extends it out because you can send your people, your staff, as these wellness experts, these worksite fitness experts, out beyond that 15-minute travel. You can send it to somebody maybe that's a 30-minute travel away if it's within, if it makes sense. So that again is a way to broaden the market, broaden the piece of the pie for that operator.
Yeah, and there's nothing better than for a trainer of a gym to be given that sort of responsibility, ownership, to go outside of the facility and look after a small business like you mentioned. I know for one, that's something that I would have been excited about when I was working for a gym manager, gym owner. So it's a great point. So it adds an extra arm to an already gym facility. It could be an individual that actually just decides to go into the workplace and puts on a class if he's very creative. That's essentially what.
Yeah, exactly. And it can work with kind of both ways. There's one of the clubs that I've been talking with that's actually thinking about hiring an individual specifically to do that. Whereas as other club operators, and where I always thought was the opportunity is that it helps people leverage maybe idle times of the day that they have. The club industry still operates on very strict time schedules, and some of those are actually opposite of what goes on in the corporate arena. So if you go into most health clubs during the middle of the day, around lunchtime, kind of depending on where they are, they're maybe not going to be that busy. They're certainly not going to be as busy as they are at prime time after work hours. But you go to corporations, and they're going to see the bulk of their people through the lunch hour. So if a trainer is focused on either their early morning appointments or their evening appointments, they might be able to bring in some extra time, extra revenue by doing stuff in the middle of the day when they normally wouldn't have anything to be able to do.
Yeah, and I can imagine, as you already said, it's quite a lucrative market. It's something that's sustainable. Not sustainable is the wrong word. It's something that a trainer is not necessarily that used to, which is a regular source of income if they get the right contract in place. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. Most of the contracts that I've seen that these trainers have been able to put together are for a set time frame for X number of dollars a month to do these numbers of programs. So yeah, you're actually creating a much more stable financial platform that gives the trainer the ability to actually, I can actually live a life here. I can actually maybe go on vacation if I'm bringing in people that, the one trainer I mentioned in North Carolina, he's running a business now. He can be and enjoying the benefits of that.
Yeah. I suppose one of the questions that I should really ask from the other side of this, as you mentioned that you've been there in that situation where you're receiving these phone calls from gyms. What advice do you have to the trainer, the gym owner that is looking to put this offering out there? From your point of view, I know that we spoke previously about, there is a few statistics about this and how it can benefit the employee, the business owner through less illness, less time off, sick, etc., increase energy, productivity. I know this is included in the ecosystem and framework in how to sell it, especially on the benefits to the owner. But just for the purpose of this interview, would you mind just sharing your piece of advice? What is it that you feel business owners are looking for? What would make them buy and take up this opportunity?
Yes, that's a great question. So the interesting thing about the way this is all sort of shaped over the years, and again, going back to the kind of some of the seeds of how this started. So many, many years ago, as I got into this industry, that was always the talk about, okay, if we can get insurance companies to pay for this, then employers are just going to just jump at it in droves. Okay, well, that's a great model potentially for the United States. But unfortunately, it never really worked. Everybody keeps talking about, well, if we get people exercising, eating right, doing all these right things to be healthy, we're going to lower our healthcare costs. The challenge with that is it's extremely difficult to prove. Like I said, I've been in this industry 35 years, and there's barely anybody who's done anything to prove it well. I wasn't even able to prove it in my organization. And one of the things that we added on top of the fitness industry, I actually had a full service primary care medical facility that we ran that the company paid for out of pocket, and we couldn't even prove an ROI on that. So it's really difficult to actually show that kind of an ROI. And as an employer, particularly if you're an employer in a small company, you don't have the resources to dedicate to the effort that it takes to collect the data, crunch the data, keep it private for the privacy issues and all that, to really show any kind of a health care spend to change. So there's been a movement over the last several years across the entire workplace wellness industry to kind of move away from that. And unfortunately, I think they've moved in a direction that's taking it farther away from what really is going to matter to employers. They started to talk about well-being and changing the way that people work and the nature of work. All that is well and good and noble, but for the most part, it's not really going to resonate with employers, especially those smaller employers, because you're going to have the chance to talk to like the CEO or the president of the company. The guys are going to make the decisions about whether or not to do this. That stuff doesn't resonate with them. And it gets even more and more difficult to prove. So what I want to help do, and I think one of the biggest value propositions and selling points that we have with the workplace fitness ecosystem is that we're talking about resilience. Now think about it. The one thing that's going to happen to all of us at some point in time is crap. Crap's going to happen, right? Shit happens, as they say. And how we bounce back from that is really the cornerstone of resilience. So with all this great effort to make the workplace better, you're still going to have crappy workplaces. You're still going to have to meet deadlines. You're still going to have high pressure, high stress situations. You're still going to have crappy bosses. And if you have resilient employees, folks who are taking care of themselves and are able to weather the storm, so to speak, and get through those things, that's really what the employer is looking for. The employer is looking for people in their organization who can continue to do their job and be productive in the face of all the stuff that happens. So that's one of the ways that we've designed the workplace fitness ecosystem, is to really talk about resilience. I mentioned the 5 dimensions of fitness. So we designed the program to make sure that people are getting the right activity, the right nutrition, the right rest, the right mindset, and the right gear. Those are the 5 dimensions of fitness. And depending on what a club operator or a personal trainer already has in their toolkit for those covering those 5 dimensions, they can either hang it onto that framework, or like I said, we can help them fill in the gaps. One of the clubs I'm talking with right now doesn't have a really good nutrition program. So I'm helping them find a nutrition program or nutrition offering that's going to fit into that framework. And we've also designed the framework when we use the term right in front of everything. The idea there is what is it right for you? We want it to be a common currency across all 5 dimensions that we can measure, but also that's relative to the individual. So each individual is measuring themselves against themselves. They're not trying to compare themselves with their next door neighbor, their cube mate, their office mate, who might be, an entirely different age and fitness level than they are. And everybody's able to compete and get benefit out of this on a level playing field.
Yeah, it's a win-win all round from what you've said, and from what you've said in terms of from an employee point of view, but also from a trainer gym point of view. It's a win-win situation. And I like the fact that it's not just focused on exercise and fitness. I know that's the start, but you do focus on the nutrition. You mentioned the gear, you mentioned the mindset. That already offers more than what a gym could potentially offer, right?
Exactly. But if you think about it too, most of the gyms probably have the capabilities. They probably have staff that understand the technical aspects of many of those pieces, but they haven't put it together in the right context. They haven't put it all together in a nice package. And then one of the things that really differentiates what we're offering from a lot of other things that might be out there, and I think, that some clubs who have made attempts to do this, is this mindset piece. And I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart. One of the things that we tried to do when we put this together is, having been in the corporate arena for so long, I was exposed to a lot of the things that we would do for our employees for personal and professional development and organizational development and learning. These are the things that I started to think could be very, very useful as tools for trainers and the individuals they're working with to help them be more successful at the other 4 dimensions. So we're talking about things like the Gallup Strength Finders. Gallup Strength Finders is an online assessment that you can take. Anybody can take it for $10. It gives you feedback on 34 dimensions where it looks at 34 dimensions, what they call your strengths or your talent themes. And you get a report that tells you what your top 5 is. This basically is telling you kind of how you view the world, the lens that you look through to view the world. And when I first took it, I went, wow, this is amazing. It was so dead on. And it gave me actually labels for things that say, okay, this is why I do this. My number one is responsibility. I'm also a leader. I'm also an arranger. I'm also futuristic and strategic. So these are the lenses that we use. And if you understand what those are, then you can turn those into strengths and use that as a trainer and help really steer how you help a client be successful. If you get somebody that doesn't like to learn or doesn't like to be in groups, you don't want to give them a whole bunch of information that they have to read and digest. You don't want to put them in a group exercise class. No. So things like that, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, those are all the other things that we're trying to bring to the table.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this system, this framework, is that you are looking at completely differently and considering more than just exercise. My next question for you, David, is as a startup, what do you believe a service like Fit Happens Intentionally can add revenue-wise to the bottom line, and what is expected to see for a turnaround time?
Yeah, and that's really the question that we're in right now. So yes, this is a startup for me. I've got one club that I'm currently working with right now to help me prove that. I became very interested in the whole lean startup philosophy when I started looking at how to put this business together. And one of the things they talk about is a minimum viable product, and looking for early adopters that will help you with that minimum viable product that might not be perfect yet, but help fill that out. I'm confident that what we've put together in the ecosystem is going to work. The idea is to really drive revenue to the fitness business by leveraging this opportunity. But I haven't done that yet. And until I can prove that, then I don't have a strong of value proposition. So I'm willing to work with some organizations early on if they're willing to work with me to figure what that is. When I kind of look at it from the crystal ball perspective and say, well, what can this potentially do? Here's how our business model looks. The business model is eventually going to be set up as a license. So a gym operator, boutique studio operator, personal trainer will pay me a licensing fee, which I'm right now pricing at about $2,000 US annually. Mm-hmm. Not really expensive.
No.
CrossFit's $3,000 to be able to get and start a box. You get for that $2,000 license, you get the Fit Happens Intentionally brand, and I think having this overarching brand is important rather than having the gyms white label it just because of the market fragmentation. And then they'll also get support from us in terms of how you get this thing off the ground. How do you approach the employers? And then there's a training piece that the initial training will be about $500 US, and that's to help put together the framework, train the staff to position the staff as workplace fitness experts with the eventual goal of placing the club as that wellness hub within the community. So so basically right now what a club is looking out of pocket is probably $2,500 to get this thing up and running. Once we have an agreement, the training is going to be designed primarily to be delivered from the distance learning perspective. I'm working with the National Association for Fitness Certifications as my distance learning platform. We're putting together the curriculum right now. So we'll be able to deliver that remotely anywhere that we want to, get them up and going, make sure the framework's all together, start reaching out. They should be able to start reaching out to local employers. I'm thinking within a month or so of having signed the contract. And then any revenue that they're getting in with a contract is going to be non-dues revenue that they'll be able to add on top of that. A lot of the contracts that I'm seeing some of these personal trainers getting, which are only for like 1 or 2 exercise classes a week and maybe 1 or 2 lunch and learns a quarter, these are a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
So that's just for like one personal trainer and one contract. So you start multiplying that, especially if you're a club owner and have the ability to really leverage that. There's I think a significant potential for non-dues revenue that will be sustaining for the club owner.
Yeah. So so essentially there's a model that trainers can just replicate. They don't have to rethink it. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's a simply plug and play.
That's the idea. Plug and play and make it turnkey as possible.
And especially speaking from a trainer's point of view, there's so much uncertainty in their mindset for many reasons. You're essentially giving them certainty, confidence in a system that's it has kind of worked in the past, essentially because of your experience and what you've been exposed to. You've just found a way to put it all together.
Yeah, I really, the only thing that I'm trying to do right now is to monetize it, improve the monetization. Because yes, this is essentially what I was doing in the corporate arena for nearly 20 years. So and the other thing I think that we help trainers do, trainers have been, especially the good ones, are really, really excellent at what they do, which is a very technical oriented skill to get people to progress through exercise, nutrition, whatever, to have an end result. What they may not know how to do is, how do I go in and actually talk to somebody who is a CEO or a leader in an HR in an organization and tell them how to work with this program? And once I get in, how then do I continue that relationship and manage that relationship successfully with that organization? They're great at training people, but they may not be really super good at selling themselves to an organization and understanding what needs to be, how they maybe need to change their message a little bit to adapt to the corporate culture.
So essentially, it's the business element which they're not renowned for that you're essentially giving them as well.
Absolutely.
And just a quick question: is this just inside the US or is it globally?
That's a great question. I believe that this is something that can be done anywhere across the globe. What I found very fascinating when I started to, again, take kind of a year journey through figuring out how to do this is, as I said earlier, one of the things that drove this in the United States was this idea about saving money on our insurance costs. But I think anybody across the globe has certainly been aware of the upheaval that's happened in the U.S. with how we do our healthcare. But what I found very fascinating is, as being part of that when I was still within the corporation, is finding out how many other places across the globe that already had socialized medicine or government-provided healthcare in place were really jumping on the employer workplace fitness bandwagon. I know you're from the UK. I saw a lot of studies and reports out of there, a lot of studies and reports out of Australia that showed a great deal of interest in companies, particularly the small and medium-sized business, for bringing fitness to the workplace. Because I think they were seeing the same things that I was seeing, that this wasn't something that was designed to change how you were paying for healthcare. Once you get outside the United States, that's really not the issue. The issue is, how do I do the best for my employees, show them that I care, and at the end of the day, I'm getting a more resilient, productive, and healthy workforce as an employer. So anywhere there are employers that are looking for that kind of result with their workforce, this is something that can be of value to them. So I think it's a global play.
Yeah, I can speak for the UK, obviously. And what really interested me by this was, as I mentioned to you previously, when I owned the studio, it was a case of I was trying to set something up to work with local businesses. And something that I came across, which really got hold of my interest and really wanted to create something, was that there's a health insurance in the UK that I think it was called Vitality, that if you could prove that you was improving your health and fitness score, let's say, it would actually bring your premium down on your health insurance. Is there something similar to that in the US, or is it completely different?
Yeah, no, that's actually very similar to what a lot of the insurance brokers in the US have done. And we go back to the story I related earlier about the personal trainer. He hooked up with a friend who was an insurance broker. So that is one of the things that they were offering to their book of business. So you get this gentleman in here, start offering some classes to talk with nutrition, do some exercise, and we can actually talk about lowering your premiums. Because you think about it, the insurers are the ones that are actually paying the bill. And when I designed this, I started to have to look, who's actually paying the bills here? The insurance brokers are, and the companies are, the companies that are self-insured. But mostly the smaller businesses are going to be in an insured model. We have a growing number of smaller companies that are moving to a self-insured model, which means the company then kind of bypasses the insurance piece of it, where they're not paying a premium, so to speak, but they're actually saying, okay, I'm going to pay directly for the cost of healthcare for my employees. Those companies then have an even greater incentive to say, what can we do to manage our risk for that cost? And they still believe that there is something to be said for this. And I think there is. As I said earlier, it's extremely difficult to prove and to relate to a specific activity in health and wellness having a specific result in reducing healthcare costs. But everybody knows that intuitively this should be right.
Yeah, and I suppose it would be an advantage if the owner of the business was actually into fitness and health himself, because he obviously he understands the what the exposure of being healthy can do for you, right?
Absolutely. I think when you look at some of the keys to success for programs that are offered in the workplace now, whatever flavor they may be, that's like the number one success factor is the support from the corporate office, the head office, whether it's a owner, president of the company, CEO. They've definitely got to support it. And one of the best ways they can support it is by being visible and actually participating and living the talk, walking the walk, living the talk themselves, but also too, in terms of what kind of resources are they providing for these services to be offered. That's one of the challenges with the small employers.
Yeah. I really like this system, this framework, ecosystem, what you've come to call it. And I really wish that I had access to this when I was in my studio, because it was definitely something that I seen an opportunity to be able to go into businesses and just work on site. But for whatever reason, I just couldn't quite get my head around a system. I didn't want to just fall into the same category as what we've already spoke about, just offering a discount to members. For one, I didn't want a discount because I felt I value what I'm worth. But I just, for whatever reason, couldn't get my head around it. And what you've essentially put together is perfect. And I think for any trainer that's looking for something different, looking for a different market space, new demand, I think your ecosystem, your framework is perfect for them.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate that.
And while I'm thinking about it, is there anything that's crossed your mind, David, during the show that I haven't asked you and you feel that would be of tremendous value to the listeners? Do you have anything to add?
Well, let's see here. We talked about all the mindset, and we kind of go back to the mindset piece, where I think that was a real strong differentiator.
Talking to the mindset, and sorry for interjection, and this is something, as you said, I'm very passionate about. I think by getting to work on the client's mindset, the employee's mindset, it offers an opportunity for the trainer then to also work on their own mindset, which is just, again, a win-win situation. And I believe that for any trainer that is going to be a good coach, they have to have that sort of personal development themselves. So I like the fact that you've included mindset, because it's one thing as trainers that we don't really consider. We know it's important, but for whatever reason, we don't put that much priority on it. We still just focus on the next exercise program or what to eat next. So I really like the fact that you've included the mindset.
Yeah, and I was listening to your previous podcast. I just happened to have a chance to do that when I was working out yesterday. And I know you guys talked a lot about that, about how do the trainers actually take care of themselves. And that is another big piece of it, because the real big mission for me here is I want to try to change the fitness industry and change the way they're thinking about things and the way they're doing things. You talk about mindset. You also very high on trying to get people to understand the emotional connection. I think when you talk about mindset, that's the other piece that's super important, and that the whole industry has missed for years and years and years. Like I said, I've been in this industry a long time. A story I love to tell people is when I started in this industry in the 1980s. You look at the obesity rates in the U.S. It's probably not too much different around the rest of the industrialized world, but they said that about 40 to 45% of the population was obese, and about 20 to 25% exercised regularly. Fast forward to today, and what do those numbers look like now? Well, we've done a great job. 60 to 65% of the world is now considered overweight or obese, and still 20 to 25% of the adult population exercises on a regular basis. I came to that realization back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it really was at the point very disheartening, because, man, what have I dedicated my life to? I dedicated my life to a business that's failing. And I said, okay, well, let me turn this around. How can I help change that dynamic? What can we do? And it began to dawn on me that what people were really needing to understand, and when you saw people who were successful, is when they were able to tie what they needed to do for their health and well-being to something that was a deep-seated emotional connection within their core being. So that's what we really need to do as an industry. And this is one of the ways that we've purposely put the mindset, emotional intelligence piece of it into our framework, because that's what we want to see people do. Not only the clients who are getting the benefit of the exercise, but also for the trainers and the studio owners and the club operators to start thinking about themselves. You need to be the wellness experts in the wellness hub for your communities. You're in the perfect spot already to deliver that. You've got to reach beyond the 16% of the population that we've been catering to, the folks that are going to exercise no matter what. Let Planet Fitness and the other HVLPs have those guys. They just need equipment to rent. The rest of the 80% of the population needs your help, needs your expertise, but they need to be given a program and guided along a path and shown how to make those connections with their deep-seated emotional values in order to continue to be successful and end up in a healthy, productive, and resilient space.
I think it's a great point to end on, the actual wellness of the trainer themselves, because that's one thing we do neglect, because our focus is always on our client, on how to help them, how to make them better, stronger, faster, whatever it might well be. But we tend to neglect ourselves, which we, as you quite rightly said, are the most important person if we're ever going to change this fitness industry in regards to the numbers that you've just shared with ourselves.
Absolutely.
David, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, talk about your new venture. I know the audience are going to truly value it and get a lot of information from this. On that note, where's the best place to send the audience? Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. My website is fithappensintentionally.com, all one word. You can also send me an email, dave@fithappensintentionally.com. I have a companion website because I also do consulting if folks just need a little bit of guidance. And that's dhbeadleconsulting.com. Also has links back to the Fit Happens Intentionally site. So either one of those, more than happy to talk with folks if they're interested in learning about what we're doing, want to find out more information, let me know. My biggest position right now in terms of what I'm trying to do to folks is I always want to just be of service first. So if there's anything I can do to help folks, I'm going to do it. I'm in a place in my life and my career where I'm blessed to be able to do that. Certainly at some point in time, we all need to make a living, right? But for me right now, the first and foremost is I want to be of service. So happy to talk with anybody, no matter where they are, what they're at. If I can give them advice, point them in the right direction, more than happy to do so.
Definitely. And for those that are listening, really take David upon that, especially with the 35 years experience, somebody that's probably walked across the paths of what you're about to walk through or walk on. I would essentially take that up. Just drop in an email and I'm sure he'll get back to you as soon as possible with the right answers.
Absolutely.
David, thank you once again. I appreciate your time, my friend.
Joe, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you once again to David for giving up his time and sharing his valuable knowledge around how we can serve the workplace wellness more effectively, creating new demand for our services, helping businesses become healthier and fitter, adding to both their bottom line and ours, of course. Win-win. Once again, thank you to you guys for listening. It really does mean a lot. If you pop over to www.thefitmancollective.com, you will be able to gain access to all the show notes, links, and resources that were mentioned in the show. Now, if you genuinely like the podcast, then it would be a huge help if you subscribed and left a rating and review. It might seem insignificant, but it helps more than you might think. Thank you. That's Joe Hanney, the Fitman Collective.
Thank you for listening to the Fitman Collective podcast. This is your life. Don't settle for mediocre. Don't settle for average. Don't even settle for great. Beware the average man who attracts an average companion. Beware the great man who believes they've achieved everything and appears just a little too comfortable. Don't be them. Become the patient wolf. The Fitman Collective is waiting for you. Know yourself. With us, reinvent yourself and your place in this world. Body, mind, health, relationships, career, money, all of it, and more. We can never be caught. We can never be categorized. The Fitman Collective reinvents the future of the Fit Pro. The Fit Man makes his own fate. Join us at thefitmancollective.com.